The Anthony Richardson clutch gene shows up again as the Colts get the game-winning touchdown in Gillette against the New England Patriots. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks, your resident film nerd over at horseshoehuddle.com. And my partner, as always, is Jake Arthur, our credentialed Crocs on the ground there for the site as well. I'm going to have to send you some Crocs for Christmas here, Jake, just so we can make
Crocs
that
or
work.
Shocks,
Yeah, Crocs or whatever.
Back to 2000s.
Wheelies on the ground or something, or Heelys on the ground. That's what I'll do. But guys, we have a fun game to talk about. It was not a fun afternoon for us watching this game by any means, but it was a fun finale in this Colts victory over the New England Patriots, 25-24. So today we're going to talk about how the Colts defense faltered big time in this one. It was a big reason why it came down to that final drive. We'll talk about how the Colts offense was a little bit sporadic, but the run game came alive. The offensive line bounced back big. But first, let's kick off today's post-game show with Anthony Richardson. And Jake, before I kick it to you, I do want to take the rose-colored glasses off for a second, take off the fan gear and everything for just a second here and say, this was not a perfect game from Anthony Richardson, like all games are with Anthony Richardson. There are misses, there are miscues. He had 2 interceptions in this game. First one was a great play by the defense and trap coverage that Richardson just didn't recognize. Second one was just late and threw it behind his receiver. And we all thought that was kind of the game when he threw that second interception. You even wrote your post-game article the second that second interception happened. So not a perfect game from Anthony Richardson. Still a 50% completion percentage, had 150 total yards on offense. He didn't really touch the ball much, but again, it wasn't a super productive day. But that final drive from Anthony Richardson, we have seen him do this a lot in the NFL. I mean, through 11 games that he has started and finished, he's had, 4 fourth-quarter comebacks, 2 of which had led to wins. 2 in the past 3 games have been led to wins. We have the Rams game from last year, the Houston game in week 1 this year. This kid steps up late games. No matter what's happening around him, no matter what has happened earlier in the game, when the game matters most and you give him a chance to go down and tie the game or win the game, this kid steps up. And this is why it's so hard to quit Anthony Richardson. You have the misses, you have the interceptions, you have the miscues, but this kid has so many good things. He doesn't take sacks. He delivers explosive plays. He has a great running threat, and he has that clutch gene. So, I mean, I'm so torn on him because there are reasons to be out and be discouraged, but then he goes out there and does things like this. It's like that Dumb and Dumber quote. Just when I thought you couldn't get much dumber, you go out and do this and totally redeem yourself. And I mean, it was totally redeemed on that final drive. An ugly day from the Indianapolis Colts, from drops to penalties to turnovers from Richardson to the defense playing like they forgot how to play football. And it gets salvaged because their quarterback goes down the field, scores a game-winning touchdown, converts the game-winning 2-point conversion. And that, I mean, it kind of changes the whole dynamic of this game. So Anthony Richardson, man, I just can't quit him. I can't quit him. Like, he does things like this. He has that clutch gene, baby. And we saw it in this one. And it gets you excited about what he can be. I don't know if you'll ever get there, man. But he's got some things. He's got some good things here. Jake, what were your thoughts on Anthony Richardson today?
Yeah, I'm damn near to the point where I'm good to go with him into next year. Obviously with the benching, like there were problems with the benching, whether it was deserved or not, like there were problems. His game was at rock bottom. Everything was ugly. If there were questions about the finer details of what it takes to be a quarterback, that was concerning. But now he has shown us things consistently now in the 3 weeks since he's been back that you cannot just go find in every quarterback. He can win you a game in the fourth quarter. You can win because of him. He can drag your team along. He avoids sacks. He was only hit twice in this game, not sacked at all. If you look back at these few games, how many sacks does Joe Flacco take versus what Anthony did take? You know what I mean? Like, that not every quarterback is built the same there. The completion percentage, as long as the passing game is designed this way, quite literally never will be pretty. It's just not going to. When you look at Anthony, you're really going to want to look at yards per attempt. That's going to be the more accurate gauge because it at least kind of brings that average around. And his was 4.5 today, which is not great because the passing game was rough. Like his numbers again were rough. But if you look at everything in that fourth quarter, again, 19 play drive, he himself converted 3 fourth downs in that. Incredible. You saw all the gems he was throwing downfield. AD Mitchell drops that ball that was perhaps a touchdown or gets them down into the 5-yard line. Kylan Granson. Tight ends are ghosts on this team. They do not exist unless you're Mo Alley Cox, which it's like, do you want your best tight end to have that limited of a ceiling? But it doesn't matter. Drew Ogletree redeemed himself a little bit. Like he didn't get an opportunity for a touchdown, but he did everything he needed to in this one. But then Alec Pierce, like I don't really blame anyone for that one. Like it was catchable, but that would have been a really, really hard grab. But Anthony was dealing late in the game, and you see what it looks like and how those numbers can just kind of spiral when guys aren't catching those catchable balls. But no, I don't need to see a whole lot more to be bought in for him being the guy next year. Again, it's like I think part of his game will get smoothed out a little bit, but even if it never does, he's doing enough to where guys around him, if they just do their part, the product looks better. And I just don't know if you risk losing the it factor things that he brings to the table. Sack avoidance and the ability to rise to the occasion late in the game. Again, you cannot just find that in everybody. Like franchises go decades without being able to find that. And you luckily found it in this kid who is super scattershot in his game. Like he has some pretty low lows still and some really high highs. But I think he definitely just keeps buying himself equity and how much time he has to be developed.
Yeah, and I will say this, I don't think he's been perfect these last 3 weeks by any means, but it has felt like a step up these last 3 games than what it was early in the season. Again, you're seeing more of the clutch gene from him in these past couple games. Unfortunately, we have to get these situations where the clutch gene has to come out, but we are seeing it. He's not really sailing too many passes. I mean, a little bit when he's pressured and moving out of the pocket, but I think he has controlled some of these misses to where, a lot of these misses the last couple of weeks have been more so from his depth of target rather than, depth of target and sailing the pass. So he has been better and more controlled there. The decision-making, aside from the late throw to Pierce today, I think has been much better these past couple of weeks. So I think if we got what we've seen these past 3 weeks from Richardson all season, we would be in a much better place in terms of our evaluation on him, but we can't just ignore everything we saw early in the season. So I get some of the drawbacks and the concerns, but again, like you and I have kind of said here in this first segment, you have a guy who does some of these difficult things at quarterback at such a high level that it's so hard to quit him. It really is. Because really what it comes down to him is, can he consistently hit the layups and consistently find the layups? And can he calm down a little bit under pressure and be a little bit more calm just in general in the pocket? If those things click for him, this is a very good quarterback. Like those are the only things he's missing. He has the sack avoidance. He has the rushing threat. He has the clutch gene. He has the big play ability. He has all of it right there. It's just, can those two essential aspects of playing quarterback in terms of just being relaxed and calm back there and not forcing things and finding the layups and hitting the layups and keeping the offense on track. If he can do those things, he can be the quarterback for the Colts. But I do think everything we've seen these last 3 weeks from him has been a big improvement. Again, you love seeing him finish games the way he has in this last 3-game stretch. And the Colts are 2-1 in this stretch, with their only loss being to the best team in football, the Detroit Lions. So it's a positive showing from him these past couple weeks. And hopefully he can keep building on that, keep stacking positive showings and finish strong this season. But stepping aside from Anthony Richardson and his late game heroics, we have the rest of the offense to talk about. Some good, Alec Pierce, the offensive line, Jonathan Taylor, and some bad, Kylan Granson, AD Mitchell, some spurts of bad play. We're going to talk about that here coming up in just a second.
Hey, Locked On Colts fans. If you're like me and your holiday shopping list is, let's just say it, far from complete, then I've got the perfect gift for the passionate sports fan in your life. Perhaps you've heard of IceShaker. IceShaker is now officially licensed with the NFL, NHL, NBA, NCAA, and the MLB, and will make the ideal gift, again, for any sports fan in your life. It's created by and used by the Gronkowski brothers. IceShakers have sold over 1 million bottles. They've changed the game with workout bottles, and this is the gift that you've been looking for. Just go to IceShaker.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout to save 25% on your order. They've got kitchen-grade stainless steel bottles that won't absorb odor like most plastic bottles do. We've all been there. We've smelled a bottle and it smells like a creek. That is not a problem with IceShakers. They've got the patented twist and agitator that breaks up powders, but it's silent when you shake it instead of that annoying ball that's in there. If you're like me, you just hate making noise, especially in a public setting. Again, not a problem with this. They've thought ahead on that. They were also third-party tested, and it holds ice for 30-plus hours. You know, that includes if you leave your cup on accident in a hot car, you're probably going to have ice still there waiting for you. It's also customizable. If you send IceShaker your logo, or you could check out their own custom shop to customize your favorite bottle, they could do whatever you want, really. Turnaround time on custom bottles is even just 3 to 5 business days. So that's quick. And again, very convenient for the holiday time right now. Just order your team branded bottles today at IceShaker.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for 25% off of your order. IceShakers. Show your support for your teams with the best branded workout bottles on the market. IceShakers.
And Locked On Colts is sponsored by BetterHelp. Look, guys, the month of December and just the holiday season is hectic and annoying at times, but also it's time to be happy and cozy for the things that you have in your life. And for me, working retail, doing the podcast, covering this Colts team who always falters late in the season, you know, I luckily have a great support system at home with my wife and my dog, and just something I can step away from with all these hectic times and just hold up close and enjoy these winter months. But how do you guys stay cozy during the winter months? For some, wrapping up in a blanket with a mug of hot chocolate or watching a movie with the family is the best way to spend the month of December. Therapy is also a great way to bring yourself some comfort that never goes away, even when the season changes. Guys, I have been very open on here about my struggles with social anxiety disorder, anxiety in general, and even ADHD. You guys can tell on this podcast, I struggle with ADHD regularly. If I hear something in the distance, I am looking over there and while Jake's talking. But I have used therapy before as a crutch, as a way to get back on track, and as a way to straighten out some things that have been going awry in my life. If you guys are thinking of starting therapy, like I have in the past, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked-on. All right, Locked On Colts Everydayers, we are back with our post-game show covering the Colts' essentially walk-off victory in Foxborough against the New England Patriots. Moved to 6-7 on the year, basically in the thick of it when it comes to the playoff race here in the AFC. And a huge win for Anthony Richardson. Let's talk about the Colts offense around Anthony Richardson real quick, though, Jake, because some good and some bad. We'll start with the good. And I want to shout out one player before I kick it to you. Quentin Nelson had his worst start, I think, of his career last week against the Detroit Lions. Yeah. It was a truly horrendous showing. I think PFF gave him like a 19 in pass blocking grade against the Detroit Lions. You snap forward to this game here. I don't know if you saw it, Jake, but I saw early in the game he was limping around on the field with a bad back, and we know that back has hurt him the past couple seasons. He's been dealing with back injuries since 2022, 2021, when his play started to fall off a little bit in 2022. That back has always been an issue, and I saw him grabbing for that back. I saw him slow to get up on a couple plays, but when the Colts needed 2 points on that final drive to win the game, who was the player that cleared the way for Anthony Richardson on the goal line? None other than Quentin Nelson. Quentin Nelson came across the line, delivered a massive hit, which cleared the lane, and Richardson was able to get into the end zone. And that's just your Hall of Fame guard right there. He can bounce back from a horrible performance, still banged up in this game, had a really strong game today, and then delivered the big play late to get the Colts the victory. That's a difference maker right there. That's a difference maker level player for your team. I wish the Colts had 100 Quentin Nelsons. You could always, like, even in his worst moments, I would still want a Quentin Nelson for every position on this Colts team. But I had to give some love to Quentin Nelson before I kick it to you, Jake. Who were some other players that stood out on offense for you?
Yeah, so I kind of want to start by untangling this whole web that is the offensive line right now, just real quick, because it was a completely different group than we've seen. So Bernard Ryman returned. He was out a couple weeks with the knee injury. He returned. He had been replaced by Matt Gonzalez, and Zach will be back in just a moment, guys. Gonzalez kicked over to the right side. Braden Smith was out. He had a personal injury that kept him out of this one. We obviously hope the best for him, but obviously Gonzalez goes from left to right. Tanner Bortolini, the rookie, was in the concussion protocol. He was already the backup to Ryan Kelly. That meant Danny Pinter, the much maligned Danny Pinter. He came in there and played his natural position as center, and I think did it pretty well today. Given what we'd seen in general from him in the past, especially at right guard. And then at right guard, Mark Glowinski, the move that we had been talking about now for about a week, kind of saw the writing on the wall on this one, but didn't know what they would do with Gonzalez. Bortolini factors in at some point. So obviously when Braden Smith returns, he's going to come back, but I don't know if they're done tweaking this thing. I would imagine Glowinski still stays there, just out of, he did a good job and they like to keep the continuity there. But really, it was impressive for the offensive line to rebound the way they did after a trend of really ugly games, throwing out like a completely new lineup. But shoot, Glow, who got cut by the Giants this offseason and benched by them the year before, went right back in there with the Colts and pretty much looked like he did previously when he used to play in between Ryan Kelly and Braden Smith.
Yeah, and we saw with the offensive line resurgence back to the standard that we expect from the Colts offensive line, we saw the run game come back. We finally had a rushing attack, and honestly, the rushing attack was kind of what carried the day for the Colts offense. The passing game wasn't there. Even if they would have connected on a couple of these deep shots in the fourth quarter, which we'll talk about in a second, like the passing game still was not going to be perfect today. It just was very ineffective for most of the game. And the Colts really didn't lean into the passing game. They leaned into that run game quite a bit. I mean, we saw the drive out at halftime.
They wanted to run the ball back all week. That was like the point of emphasis, is they wanted to be able to do that.
Yeah, it was like 7 straight runs out of halftime too with Taylor, and they went down and got that field goal. Richardson ran the ball really well too on his QB designed runs. I mean, they wanted to run the football, and they were able to do it behind this offensive line. So great showing from Jonathan Taylor. He also had a touchdown catch in this one. Good showing from Richardson running the ball. And then again, the offensive line actually creating the holes and getting some displacement this week. Just hats off to those guys. And also shout out to Alec Pierce, game-winning touchdown catch or game-tying touchdown catch before the 2-point conversion. One of the few players that came out there ready to play at wide receiver, because that segues real quick to our negatives with the offense. What's going on at tight end? A.D. Mitchell with a huge drop. I mean, Kylan Granson, another huge drop. I mean, it felt like the players around Richardson on that fourth quarter drive were like actively not trying to help him get that win.
You used the word sabotage last week, and it wasn't much different in the fourth quarter of this one.
Yeah, oh gosh. I mean, the A.D. Mitchell drop, I was hoping that the defender got his hands in there, because even if the defender got his hands in there, though, you could still be like, Mitchell, you got to go up and attack that ball. Why are you waiting for it to fall to you? Don't rely on gravity to get that ball to you. Go up and get it. But even then, when you showed the other angle, it fell right into his hands. He just didn't catch it. And then you go to the Kylan Granson one. The announcers were desperately hoping that they could just blame that on the quarterback. They were like, let's see. He kind of laid out for this one. And then even Amendola was like, this is a play you got to make in the NFL. And I feel like we've been saying that a lot about Kylan Granson this season. This is a play he needs to make if you're in the NFL. And he has not made pretty much any of those plays this season. So the Colts need a tight end this offseason is arguably the biggest one on the entire team. We'll talk about that more during the bye week for sure, that the Colts tight end play has not only been unacceptable this year, but it's been downright atrocious at a lot of times this season, and it's costing the Colts football games. And I mean, if the Colts don't score there, we look at that Kylan Granson drop as a backbreaker in the Colts season. So I'm glad they were able to bail him out by scoring. But again, too many drops, another illegal pick play penalty, regardless if you want to blame that on the refs. Like the Colts need to do something to not get the refs' attention on those plays.
Yeah,
too many of these things each week.
I know fans are getting really frustrated about that because it's like 3 straight weeks. These crews know to look for that with the Colts. So if they get suspicious about it at all, they're going to be a lot more trigger happy when it comes to pulling that. It doesn't matter whether you think it's legit or not. The referees are looking for a reason to call it. So if they see it's even a close call, they're going to do it. But no, I agree that the tight end group is a mess. Luckily, this is an awesome tight end class coming into the draft, which is probably so we're going to wind up talking about this week. But no, man, I don't even know. Like the group top to bottom is just not great. Like I'm also like a huge Will Mallory proponent, but he had the play that came back today. Like I think as a pass catcher would be an upgrade if you got him more involved, but like even that is to a limit. It's like this tight end group you're just gonna have to get through it for these final 4 games.
Yeah, for sure. But guys, if you thought the negatives were going to stop there, don't worry. We have the Colts defense to talk about coming up. And is it a coaching issue? Is it a player issue? Is it a player acquisition issue? Or is it everything? Like, is it just everything with this defense? We'll talk about it here in just a second.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. FanDuel had the Colts as 2.5-point favorites in this one. I thought they would hammer the spread. The over-under was also 42.5. This was an oddly high-scoring game compared to what we thought it might be. But yeah, well, if you bet on this one, let us know how it went for you. But otherwise, for next week, just go – actually not for the Colts, 2 weeks. Just go and visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
And guys, I'm going to take you back in time real quick about one of my favorite experiences as a kid. My grandfather took me to a college football game. I got to see Maryland versus Clemson. I was super excited because my grandfather guaranteed that I could go meet the Maryland players in the locker room after the game. I was so pumped, getting really excited because he knew a cameraman that was going to let me into the locker room to meet the guys. And then CJ Spiller happened to this Maryland defense. CJ Spiller went crazy in that game, and I was told directly by that cameraman, the players are not in the mood to talk to anybody right now. And you know what? I would also not be in the mood. But the game was great regardless. I got to see one of the best college players of my life have a big game, albeit against one of my favorite teams in Maryland football. And that games that are possible because of Game Time. Game Time has a new feature too called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks makes curation is so much easier so you can save more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, and anything near you. You also get seat views, a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. You get the lowest price guarantee as well, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And also the greatest thing ever, which is the Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So if you want to step back away from a game where you see Maryland going against CJ Spiller because you know those guys aren't going to want to talk to you afterwards, that's what the Game Time ticket coverage is for. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, Locked On Colts Everydayers, we're back talking about this Colts victory over the New England Patriots, but this victory came at a cost, and that cost was we had to watch this Colts defense attempt to tackle somebody in the cold. And I don't think the Colts are going to beat the dome team rhetoric with a game like this.
They're not beating these allegations, buddy.
Now, I'm very curious to see what Pro Football Focus will put as the Colts missed tackle number in this game, because I want to say against the Detroit Lions, they had their second most of the season, which was like 16 last week against the Detroit
It
Lions.
was 15 last week, which
Yeah,
created
15.
a ton of extra yards. Yep.
Yeah, and then their season high this year was against the Jaguars when it was 645, I think, in that game.
I think you're lowballing.
Yeah, 645, maybe just from the linebacker duo in that game against the Jaguars. So now we get to this game, and there might have been that many missed tackles on each run by the Patriots. A Patriots offense that was, 32nd in passing per game, 32nd in running per game, the worst in terms of yards before contact for their running backs in the running game, giving up like the 6th most sacks in the NFL. The Colts stood tall in the red zone, Jake, and they had a really awesome lucky interception in the goal line, and they had 4 sacks where Drake May slid before the line of scrimmage 3 times. So that's our positives, Jake. What did you take away negative-wise from this Colts defense in this game?
Yeah, this could have been a wildly different outcome if not for New England being 2 of 6 in the red zone, which, granted, the Colts have to kind of help them get into that. But no, I was paying special attention to the linebacker play. And I thought New England, in the run game, New England's offensive line did a good job of moving guys on their blocks. But even when the linebackers were there and free to make a play, they took themselves out of the play. I thought Zaire Franklin in particular, I tried to pay special attention to him today because I always see the numbers and I always just see the general performance, but I really wanted to look at it today. I was like, dude, there was like 3 or 4 plays where literally his momentum just took him out of the play. And the Colts' second level run defense is heinous. Like, the linebackers are supposed to clean things up if the line gets blown off, and it's just not happening. And they're there to do it. It's not like they are getting driven away either. So that was heinous. The Patriots offense, probably the worst in the league, comfortably. I can spout off a bunch of different stats, but in this game, they had their second most points, easily their most yards. It was, I think, their most rushing yards and their third most passing yards in a single game for the Patriots. So, like, they had their Pro Bowl performance, and it's a little too common for crappy offenses to come in and do, the Colts are bend but don't break defense. They bend them all the way to their limits. And the Colts almost broke in this one. If not for Anthony Richardson putting together a 5.5-minute drive at the end of the game, they would have broken in this one. But it was just, I don't for the life of me know why this team cannot put together a complete team effort. Special teams, I feel like, has been consistent, but that's not what we're talking about. Either the offense has a really decent game and the defense is terrible the whole time, or vice versa. They do not play complementary football ever. I don't get it because either side is capable of doing it in any given game. They just can't do it together. And it's so frustrating because this was a game they should have been able to win like 30-10.
Yeah.
And it took late game heroics just to get a win. They shouldn't have even won.
Yeah. And I do want to put just the very slight stipulation here. I'll be the rose colored glasses, I guess, in this segment. The Patriots offense has been better with Drake May. Drake May has been a pretty big upgrade of Jacoby Brissett, but it doesn't excuse a performance like this. It really doesn't. It was the worst showing from this Colts defense since the Jacksonville disaster. The Colts defense had been playing better since that disaster. But I think they regressed in a lot of ways in this game. And I saw a lot of conversation throughout the game about defensive coordinator Gus Bradley. And again, we go back to what we said after that Jacksonville game where, yes, he will ultimately be the guy who falls on the sword for games like this. And again, if the Colts miss the playoffs, he will be the guy who's gone. Absolutely. But again, a lot of this, and we'll talk about it more this week with the bye week, a lot of this comes down to the complacency of building on that defense. This defense, you are guaranteed a job the next season as long as you're not, downright awful. Like they've had the same defense since the 2022 disaster, aside from like 2 or 3 different starters. They don't change personnel very often. And we're seeing the same results every year, man, where it's just not good enough on that side of the ball. So yes, Gus Bradley's an issue, and I'm sure he will be the guy who falls on the sword for it. But is Gus Bradley missing 30 tackles a game? Is Gus Bradley a linebacker who has no clue where he needs to be in coverage? Is Gus Bradley a defensive lineman who can't get off of a block from a guy who was on the practice squad for the Patriots a couple weeks ago? Like, is Gus Bradley a Nick Cross who can't make any tackles in this game? Like I hate to single out him in particular, but that was just a guy who came to my mind from another guy.
I had an ill-timed tweet, a positive Nick Cross tweet, and then his game just tanked. So then it made my tweet look terrible. So,
yeah, so it's just like, yes, Gus Bradley is an issue when you have games like this. They were sitting back too much. The blitzes were very predictable, and they were putting guys in bad spots to make plays on the ball, and they didn't adjust to the fact that the only thing the Patriots were doing were throwing short and throwing over the middle of the field. They needed to adjust to that. They needed more man coverage. They needed to adjust. But even if they did, say they whipped out some more man coverage, even put a spy out there on Drake May with these man coverage things, again, your corners are Sam Womack and Jalen Jones. They're not the best corners in the world. How locked down are they going to be in man coverage? You go to the spy stuff. You put Zaire Franklin and a spy on Drake May. Is he making the one-on-one tackle with Drake May if Drake May scrambles? Probably not. Probably not. You go to the run game. No amount of scheme or anything you're doing there is going to make these linebackers good in run defense. Is going to make these third-level defenders able to tackle in the run game. So, yeah, we can blame Gus Bradley, and I'm all for it when you have a game like this. But something also needs to change with the personnel on defense when you have games like this. And we talked about it last week when it came to accountability, Jake, how other players besides Anthony Richardson need to be held accountable. Anthony Richardson served a 3-game benching for lack of professionalism or performance on the field and all those things. Where are we going to get these issues and these things with the defense? Where are we going to have any kind of real conversation with this linebacker duo? What about with the defensive backs with guys who, if you can't make a tackle, why are you on the NFL field? I will take anyone out there. I don't care if you can't cover, just make a tackle. Make a tackle. Stop falling off, guys. How did the Colts have the 2 most unlikely rushing touchdowns allowed of any team in the NFL this season, with the Gibson one, this one, and the Tony Pollard one against the Titans? That only happens when you are low effort and you can't make a tackle. Things need to be changed. We need accountability for these defensive players as well. When you have games like this, there needs to be accountability, and it can't just be Gus Bradley and then you bring back all the same guys the next season. What does that change? Gus Bradley held them back. Gus Bradley was the one telling them not to tackle on the field. Come on, miss me with all that kind of stuff there.
Yeah, I would like to think I'm always very optimistic when it comes to giving players the benefit of the doubt and waiting for them to develop and this and that. But there are some players I don't know. I think this is going to have to be, if the Colts are serious about getting better, this is going to have to be a very difficult offseason for them. I don't know what changes in leadership are going to be made, but in terms of players, the leadership that's still here does have the power to make decisions on guys who just are and are not playing well enough. And some of these guys are veterans where it's you are who you are at this point. If they're serious about getting better, man, they've got to. There's guys who make a lot of money who they're going to have to make way for younger, more productive players. This cannot be a roster where the common starting player is just safe because you like him and they're a good leader or anything. There has to be accountability, like you mentioned. We've seen a little more in-season accountability. Dalton Tucker was replaced in the lineup as well. That's one we felt was obviously coming. I don't know if they're going to be changing any defensive starters the rest of the year. I don't know if they have the depth to do it. That may be part of the reason. They just don't have anyone adequate enough behind them to actually replace them. Doesn't help that Jalen Carlisle is injured. We may have seen more Carlisle at this point if he hadn't gotten injured. I don't know. But yeah, the defense, it's a little different because there's just not the depth to make some of those moves. But this offseason has got to be about getting better.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this week with the bye week coming up, and then obviously the offseason right around the corner as well. So we'll talk about these big picture issues for sure coming up, guys, on Locked On Colts. But one thing I will say really quick is, when you look at this Colts team on offense and defense, there's not many irreplaceable guys. But with the way the Colts operate, there's not many ways to replace them. Your whole way of replacing guys is 1st and 2nd round picks. And even those guys take 3, 4, 5 years to maybe be at the level where they're replaceable, So I don't know. I don't know what direction the Colts are going to go with who they have at GM and the way that he likes to operate. But we'll talk about that more this week with the bye week coming up and us getting a little bit of a breather from this Colts team. We do want to thank you guys, though, for making Locked On Colts your first listen today and every day. Now, for your second listen, go find the new Locked On NFL now with 2 shows every single day. First, the Madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. If you guys want to become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly and get that insider scoop, follow the link in our show notes. If you don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on Twitter. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We love you guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow afternoon.